Peter, we are here today on this most historic day.
It is.
People are going to, years from now, decades from now, maybe even 100 years from now, they're going to look back on everything and come back to this day. They're going to think, wow, history was made.
Up there with Plato, Socrates, all the greats.
All the planets
Yep.
or dwarf planets that people have been named after, here we are.
We're going to be there.
We might be.
All right.
Because we are here specifically, Peter, because the two of us know a lot about everything.
That's very true.
And we have discussed many times, gone back and forth for many, what feels like eons of time.
Long time. Yeah.
About, just how good our opinions are. And I feel like, it's good. It's cool when you just speak to someone else and you share your opinions with them and theirs with yours. But, like, why not, like, capitalize on that?
It's true. With all of the vast amount of knowledge that we all have, why not share it? Perhaps make something useful out of it?
And that's
So,
exactly what we're doing
that's
here,
what we're
because
here.
we are preaching
Exactly.
to hopefully at least 4 people, besides myself, 4 times.
I mean, that's a good thing. Yeah.
But this is specifically the first of these conversations which we are producing for all to see. And Peter, would you mind telling me why we are here? What specifically are we talking about on this most historic day?
So for this very first historic episode, we are going to be discussing the classic article of Japanese filmmaking by director Akira Kurosawa, the film Rashomon. And we will also be discussing a modern take on such a classic.
Something that will be a modern classic.
Exactly, yes. The Fall Guy, directed by David Leitch, I believe.
Yeah, almost David Lynch.
Yeah.
It would have been a much different
A few letters
experience.
off, and I can only imagine how Ryan Gosling would have fared in a David Lynch movie.
It would have gone hard.
Perhaps in the next few years.
But yes, we will talk about Rashomon first, which, Peter, I must say that I am so happy that of all movies to be covering first, it is one from Kurosawa's catalog.
Which is
That
my
is the
first.
chosen. That is
My
your
first.
first. So
I've-
first of all, it's baby's first Rashomon.
First Akira Kurosawa. Yeah,
First-
yeah,
What did I say? First Rashomon.
Rashomon.
It's
First
also
Rashomon.
that counts.
Indeed.
But specifically, the reason why I think it's so important that the first movie we talk about is a Kurosawa film is because he has made like almost all of his catalog, each and every single one of them is the ultimate film bro film.
It is so.
Because
We are watching Kino here, okay?
yeah, because there's sort of 2 main ingredients, really 3 main ingredients to a film bro film
Yes.
existing, and is it foreign?
Step 1.
Is it in black and white?
Black and white, yep. And step 3.
I think it's 2.
It's just the
It's old
yeah.
and it's in black and white.
Yep.
And it's foreign.
There are many films like that we will have to get to.
Many which he has made, which I'm sure was his intention.
He has a
while making
very
it.
impressive batting record for all of his films, a very consistent filmography that I've been meaning to get
Which
into.
you know a lot about because you've
Yeah.
only seen one of them.
I've been meaning to get into them. It's a bit intimidating, but I'm glad Rashomon was my first one because
It's a good place to start, and
I
it's
enjoyed
nice
it.
and easy,
I
and
enjoyed
it's
immensely.
short, and
Yes.
it's very digestible.
It
I
is.
would say.
no, like incredibly like concise, to the point, very low frill filmmaking, but he's a master of it. There's a reason why
Yeah.
he's celebrated like this because
Which I'm sure was his intention all those years ago. For he wanted it to
Yes.
be a film bro
that
masterpiece.
yeah,
He's like,
exactly.
I hope the white boys of 100 years from now are. I hope they're gonna love this
I
one.
hope the
This is for
letterbox
them.
users are able to
Just
just grab
starts recording.
yes.
But yeah, I have seen a fair bit of his other works, specifically, and the ordering is Yoshimbo, Sanjuro, Ran, which I guess is more so called Ran, is how you would say that. Ran. Seven Samurai, Ikaru, High and Low, Redbeard, and The Hidden Fortress.
You've watched all of those?
Yes,
Oh,
and I
all of those are on my watch list,
and they're all
so I have
bangers
to watch
also.
all.
I actually guessed the order of them, and I was pretty much correct with
That's
like from like, oh yeah,
Where
I
they
saw
came
this
out,
one in
yeah.
this order.
So you watched all of this stuff in slightly.
No, I don't know what the order of it was. I just kind of got to it when I got to it, but like the order of like when I watched them, when I was writing them down, I just know myself so well that I just knew the order in which I watched them
That's the
without even
ones that
like.
you go through.
I mean, I cross-referenced them, of course. I double-checked, but I was pretty accurate.
Not too bad.
But anyways, Rashomon is a film from what 1950. It's 93 minutes in length, approximately.
I feel like that's just about the golden zone for movie length.
93, not 90.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
just 93.
So would you like to describe for us, Peter, the plot of
Yeah,
this film?
I feel like this is a film structure that took the world by storm, and now so many like contemporary filmmakers have used this kind of structure where essentially it's a retelling of a certain event that has been split up into multiple perspectives. Are we going into spoilers?
Yeah, fuck it.
Okay.
We're spoiling Rashomon, and also when we say the word the Fall Guy or the phrase the Fall Guy, it's not a single word. We'll be spoiling that also. So like, fucking.
All right. So obviously, the movie begins with the gate, the rain, very striking imagery.
So is the gate? It says Rashomon on it, but is that like the name of the city, or is that like what?
That's a
what
great
is it? I don't
question.
know.
Like,
It's just a
something I
thing.
didn't know. I like how almost removed the whole narrative is from like the outside world, because like there's hints of like what's going on, like why is the movie start like looking over ruins. Obviously you could read into it however deeply, but mostly the film is about delving into the different perspectives and kind of dealing with questions of justice, truth, like lying to make yourself seem better.
Yeah.
Self-reflection.
Exactly. Which like it's funny because I looked on Letterboxd for this movie, and then I also looked on IMDb, and both of the top reviews for that, like on each site, are essentially saying the same thing, where it's like, guys, this isn't about people not remembering stuff. This is about people lying for the sake of, their own
The
self.
multiple perspectives aren't necessarily how they remember the events that go on, but more how they want to be depicted. Because obviously these are all their recounts. It's not their like memories, but it's their how they tell the story of what happened. And so we get 3/4 wildly different interpretations of the same events. Which is there one definitive
We could think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you said 3 or 4.
Yes.
Which for me, I have 7 of them technically. There are
Okay.
like 4 main ones, but for me, the ordering of the perspective goes woodcutter, priest, policeman, bandit,
Okay.
woman. I just called her woman, wife, noble lady.
Oh, I did forget about the
Then
policeman. Yeah.
then the spiritual woman, or the spiritual medium, and then the woodcutter again. So the woodcutter takes up 2 perspectives because he tells one at the beginning, and then he reveals that he lied at the start,
Exactly.
and then is revealing more, which I also really love that.
Yeah. A good way to bookend
yes.
the movie.
And this ordering, some of them are less important than
I
others, like
think
the
I was
priest.
more saying 3 to 4 perspectives of like the actual the rape and the duel.
Yeah.
But yes, there are much more perspectives and like time flash forward, backwards, which I can only imagine how in 1950, I can't imagine it was very common.
I looked on Letterboxd to like see what other movies were coming out, and like I've only seen like a handful of them from like that exact year or like the year before or whatever, and like nothing was like doing stuff like this in this way. But yeah, for example, like the priest, like he doesn't really say a whole lot. He's just like they walk past.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the most important ones are, I guess, the woodcutter because he gets two things, and the bandit, the woman, and then the spiritual medium,
Yeah.
who represents
The husband.
samurai.
Yes.
So what should we do? Should we just go in order
I think so.
of each of the people
Yeah.
and their I don't know what they say.
Yes. I love how dramatic the opening is and how like obviously a lot of the performances in this movie are very like heightened, very I don't know. It's not something you would I see too much in movies today.
No, yeah.
But the retelling of like the woodcutters and the priests, they're just like
They're like,
it's the worst day of all time. I cannot believe this happened.
Yeah, and I love those two being like so like mentally like they're so fucked from this. And
they're
then
not happy.
he's credited as commoner, I guess, is the other guy who walks in.
I
And
love him.
he's sort of the shady guy, and
like,
he's a great perspective coming in from this neutrally. And he's sort of like I guess in a sense he's sort of the audience perspective because he's like asking these guys,
exactly.
hey, what's going on with this
being
thing?
retold to him and
And he has a really great role at the end as well, which we'll get to. So I mean, first perspective told. Once the woodcutter and the priest are like blah 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 complaining, and then the commoner shows up. He's like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And then they explain to them what happened. First, it's the woodcutter story, which is 2 minutes of him walking through the woods.
Looks amazing, looks great.
I like
just like picks up a piece.
I think it's literally like 2 minutes and like 2 or 3 seconds of him just walking through the woods, and then the camera sometimes is looking up at the trees.
Yes,
and it's like, what the hell is happening? Like I remember the first time I was like, this is going on for quite
a while.
A while. I've been like, can I call it a stylistic choice? Is it a? Did they not know what they were doing, or was are they above me, or are they? Yeah. Are they smarter than me, or what?
They're probably smart.
Okay. It was Kurosawa's genius.
It's all choice.
What did him walking for 2 minutes represent to you?
I don't know, but I guess the way he filmed like the jungle, like is very like it was like incredibly hot and sweaty. Like all the close-ups of like just sweat dripping down their faces. The fights, like the clothes like dripping to them. So it's like it kind of gets you immersed in that.
It was the Japanese summer.
Yeah.
Where it's just sweaty as balls and humid.
Getting
apparently they had to deal with a bunch of slugs or something on set. Like they kept having to pull them off. So maybe that's why they look so greasy or slimy.
Yeah. It's they look like they put their work into it.
So yeah, we get 2 minutes of him walking, and then another like minute and a half of him like discovering the hat and then the sandal or the other dude's hat. And then eventually the body. He's brought in and he's like, I found them, I was the one who discovered the body to like whatever like court thing.
We never see. I like that. I think that's a pretty intentional choice where it's not about the judgment that happened at this time, but more about how the audience decides.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I mean, we're the ones seeing them. They're talking to us when they're making their confessions. So it is almost like audience member. Do you believe this person more, or how do you feel about what this person said? Rather than like the camera then panning to some other guy,
or
some imperial court member or whatever they're discussing it to. And then the priest very quickly gives like his little like, I saw them walking. Because I don't know. I guess he was just a bystander enough to warrant going there just to confirm that they're there.
And they just found him and they're like, did you see the events that took place on this time?
Yeah, which first, I mean, if anything, this movie proves like how much shit you could get away with back in the day before like cameras, before like anything.
Yeah.
You just kill someone or do something weird.
It's like maybe they'll find the body, maybe they won't. Like maybe they don't leave a million pieces of evidence leading.
Yeah, I mean they weren't like intentionally like trying to get away with certain things, but you could argue that once they were caught, the one or some of them were maybe trying to deviate themselves out of a certain something, which we'll get to. But that's the priest, and then the policeman is the other guy who like he's very brief. He like arrested the bandit on the beach, and his back was full of arrows, and he stole the horses, which like I guess I'll get to those arrows in a minute later because they sort of connect to a bigger idea that I think is cool that this movie does. And then we get the Bandit, and the Bandit is the first like major like actual like perspective of explaining like here's what really went
The
down.
bulk of the movie is perspective, because then we get the other perspectives to twist that.
Yeah,
And,
it doesn't make up the bulk, but his probably maybe takes up the largest segment. Maybe.
Yeah.
He's up there though. What do you think about his shenanigans or his story?
I mean, I like him as a first perspective that you kind of get the actual events of the rape and the fight, just because he's very easy to like identify with or like connect with. He's very kind of flamboyant, kind of funny, crass, all of that. But as you get to hear other perspectives, maybe that will change. But there are a ton of shots from his kind of section of the story that like really stick out to me. Just like when he's first introduced and like his side of the story is just like sitting under the trees, and just like the blocking and the cinematography in this movie is pretty damn good.
Yeah,
it's pretty damn good.
Especially like we said, for the time.
Yeah.
Which you don't even really have to like see other shit. You just like you kind of know it like as you witness it. But yeah, the Bandit is played by this dude Toshiro Mifune.
Yeah.
I believe he's in a lot of other Kurosawa stuff, especially the period ones.
Yeah.
Like this.
Throne of Blood.
Yeah.
I think.
Exactly. And like most of the ones that I've seen on this, and he in those movies he plays like one of two types of characters. So either he's like the stoic, sort of silent badass, or he's like the like loud, obnoxious motherfucker, and that's what he is in this.
Yep.
And he plays it very well, where he's just laughing and kicking the sand and getting in people's faces and being obnoxious. I do really love that, like his like I guess intro when he's like he's been brought, the policeman has like brought him in front of the court, and he's just like staring at the clouds.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden like we also just see the clouds before it.
No,
it's like
great.
It's just like a minor like perspective thing. Like again, like that's not that big of a deal for I guess the films of the now, but I feel like that's also like again like now we're simply just witnessing what he's seeing for like only like 2 or 3 seconds, but like still that's like uncommon. It's just usually it would just be like held on them for that entire time, but instead we just a light mix up of the scenery. But yeah, and the Bandit is quite interesting because out of all the stories, his is most obviously false.
Yes.
And he's the one who's and that's just how he puts himself out there, like the fact that he's just such a
like how he's described as like the most terrible bandit.
Yeah, which is like more of a self-proclaimed thing.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I don't. I guess people might know about him somehow, maybe, but I think that also could be part of the lies within some of the other ones. But yeah, also like because he's just like so like obnoxious and also like so shallow. Like he drinks from a river and then he's like, it gave me a stomach ache or something, and he puts the blame on a snake. Before it, it's like what the fuck is that a common thing in like Japan at that time? Snakes die in the river upstream, and then comes I don't know where he got that idea. That's kind of wild.
He's very kind of protective of his image, and he's like,
definitely,
I would never get sick.
And arguably a lot of the other people who speak are also, are also like that. But his is the most like verbal, the most obvious about it. Because he's like, I walked up to the samurai, I tricked him into going to find some like random swords I had, and then I fought him and tied him up, and then I tricked
battle. I've never crossed swords so many times.
20 times. It's like, okay, all right, buddy. And he tricked him and fights him and beats him. And then he goes back to the lady and tricks her into going up to them. And then he like he fights her also. Yeah. And then he seduces her somehow randomly. Yeah. Like it makes no sense.
No. Yeah.
But he did it apparently somehow where it was mutual. And then by the end of it, what was it? Kills samurai and woman runs because I mean the woman survives somehow. Yes. So he I guess I think he uncut him again, so they had like a proper duel. Right. And this is when he's sort of like fighting like a badass, and he's sort of the one keeping him on edge. Like he's advancing towards him, he's always on the offense, and the samurai is like always on the defense in this fight.
Yeah, it was that moment where like the story gets super muddy. It's like when he eventually seduces or rapes her, he in one story offers her to run away with him, but then she refuses. But then she also desires for her husband to be killed. I think in this case, it was she wouldn't run away with him unless one of them was killed.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if they established that. I want to say that he just sort of went to a duel with him. I mean, I can't remember properly. I know that does happen in both hers and the samurai's perspectives.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that proposition existed in the other ones. It might have.
With the bandits, though, I do agree. He may have just wanted to
Like just show
appear
his
more
stuff.
honorable.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, now I can.
I'll fight you for yeah, totally. Let's kill you now.
Which is exactly what happened. 100%.
But like also like like if we're talking acting and stuff like you said it was different from stuff you've seen before, and I agree. But like and it's similar to other like if you watch other Kurosawa movies, like the way they are speaking and the way they like even like physically move and like especially like the way they run, how quick they are on their legs and they're like not moving their arms much. Like that's I don't know if that's just a Japan thing that they do or
it reminded me almost of I mean you've watched Possession and I watched his other film Polish director I can never remember his name but what is it on the Silver Globe and it is also like kind of loves that extravagance like incorporating your entire body into your acting. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of how they like Japanese acting or schools of thought.
I feel like they just run like that naturally. I feel like they just move super fucking quick on their legs. Because I mean that's why in the anime there's this Naruto run stereotype. They don't move their arms; they just keep it behind them.
Yeah,
so they're not like
that's how you
going like this. They're just like I don't know why, but anyways. But also like acting wise, like the samurai when he's when the bandit is like sort of coming up to them or something and seeming suspicious or I don't know at which point specifically, but they're encountering each other during the bandit story and the samurai is constantly keeping his gaze on the bandit's face and just not blinking, not even like looking down as he like does other things. He's just constantly like keeping his eyes on his face, which I don't remember where I heard this, but some other like fucking anime or other thing was like when you want to fight with your swords at people, don't look at their hands or where the sword's at, look at their face because the face will like tell you stuff. I don't know. I feel like I've definitely heard that somewhere, and I think that's the same principle was applied to the direction with this samurai character. Like he's honed in because if he could see his face, he could sort of predict like whatever sort of movements he's about to make. So I just wanted to add that before we move on to the woman who is next, and she tries to go for some sort of pathos type approach where she's proclaiming herself as the victim, not just to the bandit, but also to her husband, because she, in her story, she gets assaulted by the bandit, which sort of aligns with some of the other ones. And then after that, she goes back to the husband and she's like, I don't know, please forgive me or something. Yeah. And the dude just stares her down and is just like, that's tough. Big if true. Yeah. And yeah, that would suck if that was a thing that happened, which, it's certainly a thing that would make her look better, especially since she then mentions the fact after that she was the one who dug the knife into the samurai and that she killed him. Yeah. But she claims that she did it without her even knowing. Like she was super bummed out and sad, and then she like that. Her memory was fucked up, and then the next thing she knew, her husband had her dagger in her, and she went crazy. So obviously, if she was lying, then setting up her story in this way to make her seem like, okay, maybe she did do it, but I'm innocent because I'm not to blame, and also he was a dick, and also it wasn't really my intention to. So please let me leave
Yes.
and get away unscathed.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was sort of the ideal with her.
With her perspective
Yeah.
on trying to, because at this point in the movie, it has become pretty clear that each of the different perspectives is painting the teller in the most glorious light, or the most kind of
Noble.
believable, noble. Yeah. So it makes sense that she is also trying to do this.
Whatever is considered best from their perspective. So like the bandit wants to be a badass, the samurai wants to be like a noble good guy or something. So
And the wife is in a difficult spot, probably the most difficult, because her husband at this point in Japanese history essentially owns her, and so since she has been raped or seduced by a bandit, he is entitled, as by right per history, to just essentially throw her away. Which, that's tough.
yeah,
Samurai men were high up, very important
things
people.
have changed now, Peter.
Things have
because
changed.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I specifically wrote down the line that the samurai tells her. I believe in the samurai story when he gets uncut from his shackles. Specifically after she's like kill, like she commands the bandit to kill. What she tells one of them to kill the other or something. I don't know, but he says, "You've been with two men. Why don't you kill yourself?" Like, oh, okay. Why can't we bring this back, Peter?
Yeah.
Why can't we bring this back?
Chivalry? No. We bring back ancient feudal Japan. Maybe they were on something.
I know.
It is wild, though.
Yeah.
Just like the callous cruelty that was depicted even throughout. It's not even just local to Japan.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I didn't live back then. Let's just say that.
All right, and then the next one was the medium, who was most interesting
That caught me
because
off guard.
it's same. It's essentially two characters in one, because you have the actual woman sort of telling the story of the dead what's his name, the
Husband,
samurai,
yes.
and then you have her, but then you also have her, she's proclaiming the voice of the samurai, supposedly, if we were to believe her.
Right.
And then from that, it's somehow giving his perspective, which also somehow aligns with the central theme of, like we said, everybody trying to mold the story in such a way where they seem to be in the best situation. And it's really interesting. I guess now would be a good time to bring up one of my favorite sort of aspects of this is they don't just, like, when we're shown the story from their perspective, we are maybe shown additional things from their perspective that they may not have considered, but it's being shown anyways because it better fits. It becomes like consistent with like the narratives of other people. So for example, there's the bandit. He like is bringing the woman up to her husband, and they're sort of running fast or something, and her hat falls off. Like, I don't think that was a detail that the bandit even cared about in the first place or would have mentioned, but it's shown anyways because like it's shown specifically like landing in like the bush or whatever that like the woodcutter found. So it's like it's not necessarily something that he's thinking about, but it's something that we're shown anyways because it's like this is a possibility. This could have happened, you know, that sort of thing. So there's that. Something else maybe related to that, but it's either discontinuity or it could be intentional, and that's specifically with the woman's like makeup, where for some reason they shave their eyebrows.
I think
and they paint new ones on, which first of all is like the ugliest thing.
It is weird. That was the fashion. I mean,
it makes no sense.
Like the time when samurai men would just like shave off.
Oh yeah, they also had an ugly haircut too.
Which is
well, they wanted both parties to, I guess, not look good. For some reason, it's like the nobles were like,
what if we made people ugly?
Yeah, well, I bet the nobles or someone was ugly, and they're like, I decree this haircut. Everyone has to shave their eyebrows, and they're fucking. They have to get bald in the middle.
80 to 100 years later, it's all the rage.
But specifically in the bandit story, her like makeup after the assault, it like sort of fades away. And then in her story, or she's telling it, the like makeup for her eyebrows is still there. So I don't know if that's, they just happened to take one scene at one point in the day and
Right.
then it, faded out in another. But I mean, like, you could read into it like she again wishes to depict herself in the best way possible. So she gets like, she's like, her eyebrow makeup thing
She's still put
is,
together
yeah,
and-
it's like not messed up at all, even though, this
how
terrible
she
thing
wants
just
to
happened to
believe
her
everything.
supposedly. But yes, before we were so rudely interrupted by our good mutual friend who will maybe appear on this fine show someday.
Sometime.
The eyebrow makeup, like, it's faded in the Bandit story because I don't know, I guess he roughed her up so good that it, like, went out. But in hers, she's still displaying. So there's that, and then the spiritual medium is given this weird sort of altered voice that's like, it's
Yeah.
like a mix of, I guess it's supposed to be like a mix of hers and the
his,
samurai's in
yeah.
one.
Yep.
And that probably was not a real thing that happened, but from her perspective, that like reflects the feeling that, like, the feelings that maybe she was going through, and like depicts her in the way where it looks to be more realistic, that she's actually speaking, or the samurai's actually speaking from her.
Yeah.
That this voice distortion
That's
thing.
definitely the weirdest
Yeah.
part of the movie. Because I'm not sure how he wants that to like fit into the themes of like truth and stories and obviously lies and perspective. Because is it him? Is it an actual medium
It's
that
so
he's
weird.
speaking through, or
It's
is
so
it
weird.
just like she looked like perhaps a shrine maiden or some type of like temple attendant? What personal stake does she have in the events to create or fabricate an entire story of? But how would she know any of the
No, exactly.
anything that happens?
Because I can only assume she was called in later at some point. I mean, I don't know, maybe she was already brought there and was listening in on the other thing somehow.
Yeah, we are not really privy to the goings on of the actual trial, but as the stories pop up, that's more what we're
Yeah.
invited to consider.
And the medium, from the samurai's perspective, gives a pretty interesting take on the events as well, because he's all about, okay, he was tied up as well, and then the bandit had his way with her. I forget who unties him, but he's essentially
He's the bandit.
let free, and the woman goes to the bandit and she's like, you have to kill the samurai man.
Well, I'm pretty sure in this depiction of the events, she
tells them,
to
and then the
kill
bandit,
him
the
before
bandit
he's
frees
freed.
him.
Exactly.
The bandit frees him.
Even
then.
even the
Yeah.
bandit's like, yo,
Yeah,
like,
this is the one where
this
it's
is
like
crazy.
for some reason the samurai is like,
on his side.
yeah, the enemies turned allied shit, except
Yeah,
it's two different universes.
It's
I
weird
guess.
how the samurai seems to depict his wife in a more villainous light than the bandit.
Yeah.
Obviously,
It could be because he was legitimately pissed off, like in her story, like he blamed her for it,
Yeah.
and thought, I don't know, she deserved some sort of like punishment
Yeah.
for it. So then they are sort of teamed up and allied, and like, bro, this bitch crazy. We need to get away. But then I forget what transitions them into actually fighting.
Yeah, she's able to kind of like poke at their
Or
insecurity.
no, is that at the? I think that's the Woodcutter 2's section
Oh,
where they
right. Yeah.
which is a pretty awesome section also.
That is.
You may pass, my friend. Which, well, hold on, the at the end of the samurai story, he gets freed, and then they are on agreement terms, but the woman sort of gets away and the bandit chases after her, but like doesn't find her, and he's like, oops, sorry,
I
man.
let her go.
But he cuts him free, and the samurai is just sort of left alone, and he sort of wanders and he finds her dagger, and he commits
kills
seppuku
himself, yes.
with that.
Yeah.
And that's the end of his. And then, in between each of these, we're bouncing between like the stories that the priest and the woodcutter told and heard, from between that and the past,
So it's
and then
actually
the present.
right now
There's
three different people who
there's
have
three
killed.
layers.
Yeah,
There's also 3 layers of time because there's the present,
Yes.
which they're at the shrine, Rashomon or whatever it is, and then they're at the assembly place, the court or whatever, and then the past of like all of those other events and
Yes.
whatnot happening. So yeah, the woodcutter by this point, to the priest and to the commoner, I don't know, he claims that the dagger couldn't have fucking done anything. It was a
there.
sword.
Yeah.
And obviously he's biased because it's sort of revealed later that the commoner's like, bro, where did that dagger go? You definitely took that shit, right?
Yeah.
Because it's revealed in the bandit story that it's worth a bunch because the interviewer, it's like the one time like the interviewer or whoever or whatever court person speaks and it's like, what happened to the dagger, bro? And the bandit mentions that it was like worth a shit ton or something.
Pawn the blades or whatever. Or
Which may matter to a woodcutter who's probably not very wealthy and also has supposedly 6 children, maybe, if we're to believe him.
Yeah.
Which is also an interesting aspect to it. But yeah, the woodcutter story, he reveals that he actually did witness the shit go down rather than just he shows up at the end. And this sort of reminds me of a mentality sort of still in Japan, where people are very anxious to
keep to themselves.
Yeah, they not only just keep to themselves normally, but also like specifically for crimes. They don't want to. There's like a desire not to be even involved in the slightest, because there's I don't know, for a number of reasons. There's a very high, like if you are arrested and convicted of a crime and you like go to like court or something about it, there's like a very, very high chance that you are found guilty, even if you're relatively like it's like an
never want
it's just like an extremely like high number, like 90 something. Yeah, and people are even nervous to like if you have a number that high, that could mean a couple of things. Either maybe you're really good at getting the right people in there, or you just put everybody in who does maybe something slightly bad. And so what that means, if you are living in a country with that high of a number that you're aware of, if you're an innocent person, then that might get to you in some way. That might scare you, and that may scare you away from even like being like a bystander, like illegally like coming in and like explaining your thing. Because even like having like a slight like anything related to a crime on like your record could be like potentially detrimental. So I wonder if that was also, if that's been a thing for a larger part of Japan's history, or if that was a more recent thing and it's a coincidence that he's so nervous.
The justice that is being carried out at this point in time is like death.
Yeah, probably you die.
So in like various different degrees of painfulness. So it's not too surprising that the woodcutter may have just omitted his perspective out of desire to be even just like not dealing with any of the potential consequences.
Yeah, exactly. And he by the end is describing all 3 of them as pathetic. Like none of them are badass, none of them are noble, none of them are really cool. The three of them, they're all very shitty people each, the bandit, the woman, and the samurai. Because my thing says the woman frees the husband to make them fight, and initially they refuse, and then she sort of goes crazy and like I don't even know, she somehow convinces them
and like insulting them and being like,
you're not fucking man enough for me. Yeah, exactly.
You can't even handle them.
And they start fighting and they're both like so nervous to get like it looks like
it's like complicated. It's like rattling together.
It's like the Rock in the fucking one movie, the 9/11 movie, but it's not that. It's Scotland Tales. And they look like they've never like even held a sword before or like have fought a dude. Even though supposedly they both should have.
Yeah, this is my 50th duel or whatever, and I've never lost. And it's like, okay, maybe that doesn't.
Yeah, and we haven't talked much about the action scenes. I think they're pretty well choreographed overall, and they seem to know like what they're doing for the most part. And in this, they're like struggling the whole
Exactly,
time.
like
They're
how-
like flopping around and they're like falling over.
The choreography feeds into how like the perspectives
Yeah.
are.
And obviously in the Bandit story, we sort of mentioned that he looks more on the offensive. He
Yeah.
looked better. In the Samurai story, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was sort of the same for him. Or no, well, he didn't even fight. They didn't even fight in his version of
Exactly.
it. So it was just mostly his thing. And then in this, they're just both sort of flailing around. And there's specifically two things like in common with them. There's a part where the bandit like sticks his sword. He like tries to poke at him, and it gets stuck in the ground. In his story, he immediately pulls it out. But in the bandits, or I mean, in the woodcutters, it like gets stuck in there, and he can't like pull it out.
Yeah,
And
just
the samurai
run
like
away,
chases
yeah.
after him, so he has to like go in circles around him a couple times before he's like able to like fully pull it out. So like. And one, he's like a badass and just could immediately like, oh, I missed that thing, but whatever, I just fucking pull it out. But
It's a
in
very
this,
mythy conflict
Yeah.
and fight.
yeah. But in the end, he does end up killing him with the sword. The bandit kills the samurai with the sword, and then the woman runs away like she always does, I guess, in each of them.
So obviously the woodcutter's perspective is very demeaning / derogatory towards all of the involved parties. Is this all 100% accurate? Is this perhaps his anti-rose colored glasses kind of tainting his vision of them and kind of making them seem worse? Because obviously many of them are, where the samurai and the lady at least are of a higher standard than he is. And the bandits, there's no reason to respect a bandit. So perhaps all of them are painted so pitifully.
But arguably, if this dude is some infamous bandit, he may be held to a higher standard than this common woodcutter by society, depending on if they glorify those types of dudes in that place at that time.
Into like
Those types of
tales of like
criminals,
fables
right,
or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, because I mean, he's supposedly neutral, but he does have the obvious. They mention the knife after he finishes telling the story, and there's that motivation there. But I think other than that, I agree with what you were saying, where like this samurai and this, I guess, noble lady, and maybe even this bandit are held in a higher regard in society than he is. So he's sort of, I guess, just I'm this normal dude. I'm this normal everyday man. Look at these shitty people that
I can't
are in
believe it.
charge of us.
I could
sort
do
of.
that. I could fight that.
I could get in there.
Put me in a position like that. It's over.
And we don't even see him in the entire time he tells his story. I mean, sort of near the end, we see like the bandit like limping away or something, and like the camera's like in the trees, which I guess is supposed to sort of be his perspective, but like we never like see him fully in that even. Which I don't know. That's maybe interesting. And then we get to the very end of the movie, after all the stories have been said, and the commoner is just kind of like, "You're also full of crap, man." They hear like this baby, also in the shrine, who wasn't crying this entire time.
Where the
like
hell
an
are
hour?
they from?
It was just. I mean, I don't know the rainstorm, because that's also an important thing. It's raining the whole time.
So you gotta tell the story to pass the time.
Yeah, they're all under it, and then by the end it sort of lights up, and the rain is gone, because there's potentially, depending on how you look at
ending, maybe?
it, a more positive ending, but also depending on how you look at
I
it,
know.
it may not be. And that's when the commoner discovers the baby. His immediate instinct is to steal the rags or whatever the shit on it.
Like, okay.
And then the woodcutter's like, "How could you do that? Look at the charm on it. The parents obviously cared about this man." And then the commoner's like, "Bro, no way. They left a baby here. They don't give a shit. I'm taking this." And they're both arguing about each other about stuff they don't even know about. They are just projecting their like random feelings of like whatever life experience they've had onto this event that they don't know anything about. They just know that there's this baby here, and it was supposedly left here on purpose. They don't know that though. They don't know anything, but they're still coming to conclusions about random things based on what they want to believe as true.
It like serves as like a thematic climax of the story, where you get like the self-reflection of the woodcutter, with him kind of recognizing like he's also a thief, and perhaps his perspective of everything is not the end all be all, and life will continue, but it's kind of up to, if you interpret his his well-meaningness to be genuine,
Especially
and,
that,
like if he truly changed, or if perhaps these 6 children that he's talking about, it seems like an ambitious lie to say, but the priest kind of acquiesces and kind of gives him the kid, and it's like, thank you so much, I needed this.
Yeah, the woodcutter sort of builds up that he is, you know, he's okay. He sort of admits to the priest that like, okay, yeah, I was maybe shitty before, and I'm sorry, but I think I could, you know, really do a good thing for this kid and make its life better. Which, I mean, yeah, maybe, but that's only, again, if we believe this guy, because of his previous record of lying. And even when he revealed that he's lying and is now telling the truth, he may still be lying
Also,
even further after that.
Even one time, it's tainted forever.
And if you look at things that way, then what does the priest become? Sort of this gullible dude, rather than him being like this. I don't know, slightly more noble, neutral figure to like. Okay, he recognizes the turn in the good of the woodcutter, and in doing so, he relinquishes the baby within the care of him. Or is it that he's just this gullible dude who has also who's now fallen for his other lies?
For any good, where you need to have some kind of callousness to like view the truths of the world, and if you can't, then you'll get taken advantage from. Which way is it, an optimistic or pessimistic ending? You're not supposed to know, and I'm glad. But
it's arguably maybe more so in a positive way, because it's right as the rain as clears, like perfectly slows down and stops. As like it's like slowing down while they're like talking about like I could raise this baby, and then it's out by the time he's walking out.
I think Kurosawa wanted it to be a more perhaps narratively rich, and like almost like a fable or a moral kind of quandary that you can raise, but hopefully kind of analyze it and come to a better conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm glad we could look at it in both ways, and I definitely feel like Kurosawa probably intended the more positive one to be like, I don't know, the true thing. I don't really think it matters that much, because again, like if it's that positive or negative one way or the other, because I mean that's the whole point of each of these stories is any part of these could have maybe been a thing that happened, but not all of them all at once. And so we're left with this ending, which it could be either or. Personally, if I was the priest, I would not have given that dude the baby. I would have been like, I'm holding this man until I get to like the next like covenant
big
church
town,
thing, and then I can I don't know. There's like an orphanage system, maybe. I don't know. It was a billion years ago. They didn't have shit back then.
They didn't even have iPhones or letterbox
or
anything. They couldn't
they couldn't record these epic YouTube videos and talk about.
So like
they didn't even have movies to talk about. What are they doing all day?
So boring.
Oh, that's right. They're walking through the forest for fucking 5 hours for 2 minutes every day, walking through the forest.
Imagine doing that.
Also I forgot to mention that there's like the bow and arrows that he has that also maybe feeds into like the sort of like realistic perspective and like angle to certain things, because like he like the samurai, when the priest sees him pass by, he's holding a bow and has arrows with him, and I think when the bandit initially encounters him in his story, he's also holding them, and then by the time that I guess before that in the movie, technically, when the policeman arrests him, he finds a bunch of arrows in his back. And these, the whenever it's described that the samurai and the bandit have an encounter, that's only with their swords. It's never with the bows and arrows are like nowhere to be seen. So like, where does that fit in? Were these someone else's arrows that found sticking in his back? I mean, I don't know. They looked to have been the same design, but I don't know. It's hard to tell because it's in black and white. I don't know. It could have been, but what I'm saying is that it narratively still can fit into, okay, if all of them were lying and they actually did get into a scuffle and he pulled out the bow and like shot him a bunch of times as he was running away, that could still also narratively fit into it, or it could just be some random dude's arrows
Yeah, I
that he
think
was also stealing
I'm
from, and that's how he got caught. And
I'm
he,
definitely mostly inclined to believe the woodcutter event, just because
they're all pathetic and weird.
he seems to have like the least amount of personal stake in their quandary.
I don't believe him. He's
He's
lying.
a weird guy, but yeah, did he just
Yeah.
kind of hear all the different perspectives? And
I
he's
mean,
like,
out
no
of
way,
yeah,
this is what happened.
out of the four
None
main
of them
out of the
were
four main ones, he is the most believable, even despite like they've gone over like the fact that he could be lying. But also, I don't think the movie is like necessarily even to like point out
He's not.
which guy is most correct audience. I think it's more just like look at all of these people and consider the fact that that you've maybe seen or have done yourself things like this, because even though not a lot of us are going to court about testifying for the death and rape of some people, but we do in our everyday lives in our everyday lives. We do tell stories and reminisce about certain things, and sure, sometimes it is the memories get foggy, but this one is definitely leaning into the aspect of truth telling and for the betterment of yourself in whatever thing you're talking about. Even in everyday scenarios, people, I mean, do this all the time.
You like to imagine yourself as the protagonist, as the main character, everyone else.
And even in like some way, sometimes like less subtle ways, like even if they're not like speaking about themselves in like the best way possible, they're still like dialing up certain things about it that
and your
go
actions
against what
are
the truth
all
actually is.
understandable. Like, oh, I only did this because of this.
Yes.
Like, you wouldn't understand because you weren't there. But obviously, that is very much kind of the thematic narrative quandary that Kurosawa wants you to wrestle with. And it's a great one. That's obviously become an incredibly influential movie that has kind of really helped to add to like the dramatization of having multiple perspectives and like kind of pitting them against each other with like different details that are missing. It's very satisfying for like a cinematic experience because you get to be like, wait, but that, and so it's very like actively engaging for the audience, which is probably why it became so successful. And obviously, even now, people are replicating the structure. Good movie.
Yeah. Oh yes, it's very good. And yeah, I would imagine there's probably some people around who you could show this to and they'll be very bored by it because they're like, why is it so old looking?
It is.
Why do all the people look so ugly? And if they have a problem with those things, then they're gonna love this next movie we talk about, which would be a good segue. But there's actually more I want to discuss. Okay. Peter, have you ever heard of or read a thing called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Ball Run?
I have indeed read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Ball Run.
Then do you know what I'm about to bring up?
I don't. I'm not sure if I made the connection, but hit me.
Okay. Minor spoilers for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Ball Run. I'm not going to reveal like any character names or like powers or abilities or whatnot. Basically, it's an action adventure series and there's like supernatural abilities and whatnot. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about chapters 64 to 70. So that's I won't say the chapter names, I guess, also. But so I've read that series twice. And this set of chapters I most recently read. So 3 times in total for just these ones. And like, I remember after reading those, eventually I got into movies somehow and I hit up Letterboxd, and a couple of years ago I came across Rashomon and read the synopsis, and something about that really aligned with a particular arc of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Ball Run, that it felt there was a lot of things in common. But upon going back to it, there isn't really much. But there's less than I thought. But it's still a comparison. Maybe
the same feelings.
I want to describe it with as much detail as I can to you, so that you remember it, but without saying it for the audience, because it's not exactly a thing that they need to necessarily know about. But essentially, there is a part where they're in the Steel Ball Run race. They get a little distracted because there's some other goal they're trying to achieve. I just told Peter what I was talking about, so now he knows the lore. And so yeah, so they all a couple of characters are assembled in this one spot, and essentially one of the characters is shot, and he disappears, and he is shot by this sort of mysterious figure who they can't recognize. He's sort of just a silhouette, and it's shown sort of multiple perspectives of the events as what happened. But before that, in the first one, there is the dude, one of the dudes who witnessed it first. He goes to other people nearby, other like innocent people, and there's a group of boys, like twins, and this old painter dude, and they each claim that a different person was the one who shot the character who was shot at. And after we get this guy's initial perspective of the events, we then go to each of the potential shooters' perspectives in that. So I don't know if there's much else I need to say about that other than the fact that it's also dealing with like there's weird shit happening in discontinuity. And I feel like Araki, who's the author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, he maybe saw Rashomon and was maybe compelled through that to do this arc of just because there's almost like there's like two layers of alternate perspectives. First, there's the innocent people who are like saying this person did it, no, this person did it, and then there's the actual you witness each of the other people's perspectives separately from that. And it's really interesting, and I highly recommend first of all the series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Part 7 Steel Ball Run is my favorite. I don't know if that's how it is for you.
It's up there. I think I like part 6.
That's fair.
Or part 4.
Part 6 is your favorite. Is a little bit of hot take.
All very good. Part 6 is our favorite.
But I love it also. But some people, we could discuss that at a later point. But yeah.
Perhaps in another video.
Ooh, if we ever make any more of these shit. So there is because I feel like especially like the poster of Rashomon. It reminds me a lot of the supernatural ability revealed within these chapters specifically. That again I won't say. But like even just like looking at it and reading the synopsis, it reminded me a lot of that. Yeah. Even though coming back to it, it's like they're very different because this is Rashomon is exploring a much more natural way of things, and JoJo is like it's amped up and it's different.
70 years removed, and so he is able to.
They're probably taking place at relatively the same time. I mean, part 7 is Well, I won't reveal the time frame because maybe even that's a spoiler. But yeah. Rashomon's definitely older, like taking place in further past. But I don't know. Did you have anything else to say about Rashomon, or should we give the number ratings that matter so much?
Yes, I like this movie a lot. For my first Kurosawa film,
baby's first Kurosawa. It's very edible.
It's detailed. It's concise. There's a lot to chew on. A lot to like narratively analyze and kind of reflect on, which I love. We haven't really spoken about it, but the soundtrack is also excellent in like feeding into the energy of like it's tense at times, but also beautiful.
Soundtrack in the next one's also kind of interesting.
For different reasons. But excellent film. I'm giving it an 8 or a 9. I'm closer to a 9 right now, so.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. For me, it's an 8. It's a solid 8. I don't know if it'll move up. It's definitely not moving down. But yeah, it's very concise. It's very effective with time, minus like the 2-minute walking.
Always see that.
All right. Well, then I think successfully after an hour, which will be short, assumingly rounded down, but after much time discussing Rashomon, the masterpiece.
Now we get to dig into
of cinema.
Something truly spectacular.
Yeah, I mean the first movie we talked about was it's good, it's great, it's awesome or whatever. But the Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy.
From what was it released this year, 2024?
2024.
Now this is something else. So for context, should we even tell people like Ryan Gosling like what he is, or should we just assume people know that? I hate like explaining memes because that's like the worst thing you could do, but like maybe we'll get some slightly normal people watching this or something.
We can kind of
I don't know, it's an internet phenomenon. It's an identity. The specific phrasing This is the quote.
Yes.
He's just like me.
He's
for
literally
real.
me.
Or he's literally me.
Yes.
Both
Ryan,
mean the same thing.
Ryan Gosling has embodied many of these types of characters.
Yes.
Where oftentimes disenfranchised male going up against the system. That's
all we
you
need to
get
explain.
a movie like that.
Exactly. And his two most prominent roles for that is Drive and Blade Runner 2049.
You're not even saying Barbie? What the? No, but
Ken is a little bit different, but he's also a personality from him that I've borrowed. But he's like too cool. Like the other guys are like this quieter or something. They're more lonely and they're more like me.
Yes, more and more.
But Ken obviously is a great archetype.
Ryan Gosling has obviously been a very well-known celebrity, but even now he's had some incredible resurgence. So it was good to see him in a role like the Fall Guy. Honestly, I think he did well. I like him in his comedic moments.
Yeah.
Especially like I love The Nice Guy.
Yeah, I was about to say it at times reminds me of that movie, which is that movie is better than this one. This movie I think is good overall. It has
Spoiler alert.
The Fall Guy is
mostly positive.
It's I think I have mostly positive feelings about this. I watched Rashomon twice. I watched it for the first time like 3 weeks ago, and then I rewatched it again today. I was gonna do it yesterday, but I don't know, I forgot. And then The Fall Guy I watched originally 2 weeks ago, and then I also rewatched it today, but I did it at like 2.5 times speed.
I think you can get
because I just needed to remind myself of the sort of shit that was happening, because I didn't take notes the first time.
Not to be crass, but there's less to delve into with The Fall Guy. There's not as much to narratively unpack.
You can't read it. You can't read into anything.
I'm like, I'm sitting there watching. You can
interpret certain
screens.
things.
I'm like,
yeah.
What am I supposed to get out of this?
Yeah, it's.
But then I think you're not supposed to.
Yeah, compared to Rashomon, which I think is good again that we're talking about these two movies specifically because they're very different, but they're both movies at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, this one is a bit more shallow. It's a bit more in your face. It's not really saying anything. What would you say? It's saying don't be a shitty actor.
Yeah, don't be like
I don't know,
uptight. Don't be scared to take chances. It's very like kind of boilerplate
right.
Themes and lessons to learn, but it's obviously more directed at being an experience, having fun.
And it is fun.
It is
for the most part.
I think I would say I was smiling. I didn't perhaps laugh at some of the jokes.
There's one part I maybe chuckled at, which we'll get to, but like
it was a fun enough movie. I think I enjoyed Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt's kind of back and forth for the most part.
First of all, can we talk about Emily Blunt? Her name. Who came up with that? I wanna high five the dude who put that as her stage name, Blunt.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's a solid one. But she has been in just about everything. So I haven't watched many of her like more rom-com kind of things like this, but she does really well in it. I think I mostly know her as like a dramatic actress, but she's got range. Their dynamic was fun, goofy at times, obviously, but I don't think you really need to. I'm not saying you have to turn your brain off to watch this movie, but
don't ever say that phrase. I hate that. It's like my least favorite thing ever.
Yep.
Turn your brain off. Okay. Why don't I turn yours off?
Yeah. Can't do that,
buddy.
But there's a sense of having this on in the background wouldn't be so bad, or having this on with family.
Sure.
Something that you can kind of check in and out of. Obviously lock in during the set pieces, which I think were pretty solid. Yeah.
Actually, the some of the aspects I enjoyed the most were the action scenes. There's the one at the nightclub where they're like in neon. Really, he's on drugs. Yeah. Do you know what was in his drink? It's something.
He got drugged.
It's just something, and he's like whacking people, and there's like some sort of light emanating from them as he does it. It's kind of cool.
It's a cool effect. I do. Like, I like each of the action set pieces. I wonder if, because of like the meta type celebration of stuntmen and stuff
that's what I was gonna say earlier. Like, rather than it being like some sort of thing you're supposed to interpret, it's more so just like like a celebration of, look, all the stuntmen in Hollywood, they are underappreciated, which they are.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if this movie necessarily delivers that like I guess
celebration of it.
goal of it.
Yeah,
It sort of does.
because when you think of like other contemporary spectacles of stunt making, I would say like The Raid, John Wick recently, and like other movies that are like supposed to just like really get to the core of stunts. Like
Where
Jackie
action
Chan films.
where action is like the forefront and the leading actor
Yeah.
is also the leading
It's
stuntman.
definitely
You're
not
saying?
in that line of celebration.
And apparently Ryan Gosling did do the main fall thing, I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think
which is a stunt.
he's been pretty good about like not being terrible to his stuntman. I
Sure.
think, which is
Dear God, I hope so.
Yeah.
He's the lead guy in the.
can't have another Baldwin.
Oh hell no. But yeah, the action scenes were fun. There was also the one on the highway where there's like some sort of like he has like the dog who what was the language they were speaking?
French.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would like the dog was like running across the shit, and
Yeah.
there was like I don't even know
Was
what
that the garbage
that was.
truck?
It was I guess it was a garbage truck. I didn't know what it was because it like disconnected from it somehow,
Yeah.
and it was like attached to a crane or something.
Yeah, it was
Going on the road. It was fun.
during the karaoke scene. Yeah.
And then there's the final one is also
Yeah,
quite nice
that
where
was
they're
fun.
driving around the film
The
set.
climax of
It was
Metal
cool.
Storm.
Yeah, Metal Storm.
I think. Yeah.
Apparently that was a real thing, sort of. It's
Yeah.
Metal Storm, the
There's definitely,
destruction
like, a lot
of
of-
Jared's sin.
It's a lot of meta kind of like references, which I think was done relatively well. It gets a little quippy at some points, but
Well, specifically when like the his fellow like stunt dude is like punching a dude. And it's like Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
Dwayne the Rock Johnson!
yeah, exactly.
It's like okay, like
Jason Momoa shows up.
yeah. I don't think it was the funniest thing ever. I think
It kind of reminded me of like Tropic Thunder and like what they were trying to do with that kind of like meta.
I haven't
like,
seen that in a minute. Yeah, I didn't even think about Tropic Thunder there. I mean, that's quite the
Yeah, it also gives me like Bullet Train vibes, where it's kind of like obviously like heavy on stunts and like choreography and like coherent action, which is great. Love that, but also trying to be kind of tongue in cheek and pretty accessible as the movie goes.
Yeah, I was about to say like compared to Rashomon, which is old and has ugly people, this has attractive people and it's I guess nicer looking and more visually appealing.
It's
to
definitely more
more
contemporary.
people.
Yeah,
It's more of a spectacle. There's the action scenes are more blown out and out of
plenty
proportion.
of CGI.
Yeah.
Plenty of
There's a lot of practical work with the car flipping and shit.
Yeah.
But
Just
there
super
were a
impressive.
couple scenes I do remember where the cars would like swerve in such a way or like they would. I don't know. It was some certain movements of them that I remember visually distinctly like that.
Yeah.
How it should slightly.
Yeah.
So with this movie, there's sort of two main things going on, and I don't know whether to call it an A plot or a B plot because that's what I was thinking the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
But upon rewatching it at 2.5 speed, I wonder if it's if it's all just one big thing instead. If the A and B plot are interconnected,
Yeah,
and
where there's the romance and then the
there's
mystery.
there's the romance and there's the heisting mystery.
They're definitely intertwined, but I would probably say like A plot, B plot, just because
But what's the A plot?
would be probably the romance.
See, that's
what you start.
that's
with,
what I
right?
thought because that's what we start with. That's kind of what we end with. But like most of the runtime is the B plot then, which
That's true.
does
That's
that
where most of the action
does-
comes through.
what
and
I'm
that-
wondering is like can that make sense? Is it based on runtime or is it based on like
narrative
relevance
potency,
to
yeah.
like the plot or something?
That's a good question. I would lean more so that the romance would be the A plot.
Because I've only considered this one other time, and that was with American Wedding, which is the third American Pie movie. I think it's either the third or the fourth. And I kind of despise those movies, but like the American Wedding is basically there's two of them get married is the A plot, and then the B plot is Stifler, who's like this silly side character. He just fucks
With
around.
everything else.
He just fucks around with the wedding, and that's supposed to be the B plot, but Stifler fucking around is like most of the movie. So like I don't
yeah.
like so like is that
the B plot?
is that the A plot? Because it's like it's seemingly I mean it wouldn't be happening without the wedding existing.
Right.
I mean if the wedding didn't exist, they would have probably found some other reason for him to be doing weird
He's a
shenanigans.
pretty, like the Fall Guy is a pretty like action packed movie. Like there's a lot of set pieces, a lot of different like stunts and stuff. And almost all of those are like intertwined with like the
Yeah.
the mystery and like
Yeah.
who killed who, whatever.
I would say they're sort of one in the same. Like I don't even know if separating them even matters. That's just what I was thinking at first. But then upon the 2.5 rewatch, it really gets to you. The 2.5 rewatch. You just
Like
learn so
the
much.
cohesiveness of the.
It's almost like it blended together. I wonder if it was because of the speed at which I was going at. It felt like all it was one thing. Bro, it went so fucking fast. I like remember moving my mouse and like, oh my god, I'm already 36 minutes in.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
It does move fast.
this is so fast. But it's also something I don't like about it. It's one of those movies that mentions other movies in sort of an annoying way, where it to the point where it just reminds me of these movies that are better than this one, and that I'm like, I would maybe rather be watching this. I wrote down specifically a number of them that I mentioned. There might be more, but there was Rocky, Love Actually, Notting Hill, Pretty Woman, The Fugitive, Jason Bourne, which, I mean, technically when he's like punching people, I think he's talking about Jason Bourne, the character, but Jason Bourne is also the name of the movie, so I wrote that down anyways. And then the last one is Thelma and Louise, which I saw that one recently. This movie spoils it, which is kind of shitty. Like a thing to do. I've seen other movies do that also, and it kind of, I don't know if it pisses me off because it's like, oh, the movie's been out for like
a point where
30 years.
It's been enough years that you can reference.
But also, like, I think that's bullshit also, because people are like constantly, being born and being raised, and it's like the first time that they could potentially be seeing or hearing about these things. And like, just because the thing is out for 50 years, like, okay, if you are 60 years old, then sure, fine. But like, if somebody else is like 20 and they're coming into this, with a fresher face, mind, and body, then like, I mean, I don't know, what the fuck, man.
It is a little weird. I feel like I don't really. None of the other actors in The Fall Guy really stuck out to me. It was mostly like a Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt kind of show.
Yeah, and the only other the main other big name is Aaron Taylor Johnson, who for some reason I can never recognize in the movie. Like, he's my Johnny Depp.
Really?
Like, for some reason people are like, Johnny Depp looks different in every movie, but like I can recognize him sort of somewhat easily. I feel like for some reason
he shows up everywhere.
I know he's in a lot of he's in a decent amount of stuff that I've seen, but for some reason I can't recognize him. I don't know why.
Yeah, he is
something about it. I couldn't tell you.
He shows up in a lot of these kind of movies.
I think I've just had too many white boy actors like already in my brain by the point like I saw the first movie he was in.
He was white boy.
So like it like
a short.
I'm like overloaded with my white boys in films or something. So I think that's it. It's not his fault. It's just
when there's the balance.
I can only carry so many white boys in my brain.
Exactly. And right now that's Chalamet and Butler.
Those are who are on my mind right now. They're constantly on my mind. Are you kidding me? Yes. And so I technically there was a TV show in the 80s called The Fall Guy, which had the same character named Colt Stevens, who was a stunt dude, and also was like he was like a hitman or some shit. He was something that was like he was fighting and killing people and doing I guess utilizing his stunt powers to the fullest, and that's sort of something that's in this, but it's a bit more modernized, and it's like taking that idea like less like I didn't watch any of the episodes of that, but I can only assume it's like super like serious about everything that's happening, and it's trying to be like, look at this badass dude, and this is much more like sure maybe. But it's trying to take like a more a sillier spin.
Yes.
On
it's
the events.
Tongue in cheek. For better or for worse. I think not much of this movie is played off seriously, if at all. Yeah. Which makes it harder to connect with, but at the end of the day, you don't really have to. There's more of a spectacle. It's more about action, laughs, spectacle.
Which is a word I don't like a whole lot. That is sort of what this is, though, and there's like no part about it that I find particularly bad. It's just missing the emotional things to keep me invested.
Yeah, it's like I remember this movie in a year. Some of it maybe
I will, because I watched it twice.
You did watch it
One of the times was a little
beat
quick.
it into your brain.
A little
You're
quick, but also the soundtrack, Peter. So you're a big music head. Do you have any thoughts about the soundtrack in this film?
soundtracks are weird because like when you end up licensing a ton of tracks and like have a ton of needle drops or whatever in order to get like really notable moments, it can work out sometimes. I don't love the how often it's used like in the Fall Guy
Anything, or even
in
this
other
one.
movies. There is like it. I was reading some like reviews that like this happened in Argyle or stuff like that. I was thinking of movie Waves that came out a few years ago,
Oh yeah.
and that one had like a really in-depth and like layered soundtrack with a bunch of needle drops, but it was all like kind of like
Intentional?
indie, like no, it was like highbrow
Okay.
music, which I all loved, but also it's like that does the same thing as like licensing a ton of just like flat classic rocks or 80 tracks.
So that
like,
bothered
everyone
you a
knows.
little bit?
No, it just makes me. I wish there would be more like
Sure.
unique
Diversity.
soundtracks.
Yeah.
Perhaps nothing that like has to. It seems a bit cheap to
Yeah.
grab onto a moment with just like a track you've heard a million
I
times.
Was Made for Loving You is a song that I like.
Yeah.
I enjoy that song. I think they played it 3 times. When I watched it 2.5, I only heard two
Okay.
because I might have been reading something else while I was watching it at the faster speed. But I think they had like two like times where like the actual song played and then they had one cover of it in the middle. Is what I'm remembering. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what I
There's a
remember.
lot of very notable tracks that are played at
Yeah.
many different points in the movie.
And I'm sure this will come up again if we talk about it all. Any similar movies like it, but it would be nice if it was a little bit more diversified.
Yeah.
In some ways, it does very oftentimes come back to the classic rock
Yes.
things
I think that's
Um,
just because of how when you're making a
because they want to get the dads in there.
you're trying to get the most general audience that you can, and so getting a soundtrack that you can play in the trailers or that you can have people recognize immediately will do better for getting people in the seats. So I don't think it's going to change, especially not for movies like these or like Marvel movies, Disney movies. It's like you're always going to have some like big kind of needle drop moments that everyone knows, but for better or for worse, it is just how it's going to be.
Yeah, because I mean that is also a good comparison maybe to bring up between Rashomon and The Fall Guy, where we have one film that is maybe more so made for the art form. This other one, but is more of like movie for a business.
Yeah.
Type thing, and it's also important to emphasize that this is far from the worst version of that.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
it's still not bad at all. It does fall into those pitfalls,
Yeah.
but it sort of remains above ground. It's like driving on a car, you don't fall into a ditch, but you're running over potholes. Like you're like this road. It kind of sucks sometimes, but like you're still riding on it and you're still getting to your
There's
destination.
also the point that I mean, blockbusters and like big like summer movies that are made to get audiences in seats are just as valid as like any auteur film, like kind of art house stuff, because that is what most people think of when they think of movies at this point. Is a Disney
For better or for worse.
yeah, for better or for worse, but it's a different kind of like meal that you get to engage with, where as opposed to like kind of delving into something super deep, you just get the sensory experience of a movie like this, which at some points is all you need, depending on where you are at or who you are watching it with.
There is. I was looking for as I rewatched The Fall Guy at 2.5 speed. I was looking for a particular moment that stood out to me, that I found to have something in common, somewhat strongly, with the previous movie we discussed, that being Rashomon. Do you know what specific
Like the
events
connection
that they
between
maybe
these-
had in common?
Was that the death scene where you get deep faked, or
How was that? How was deepfakes in Rashomon?
well, it's the multiple perspectives of the death and
The lying about it? I didn't consider that. There's something even more specific
Okay.
that I thought of. It's specifically when the character, her name is Gail, and she's like the producer of We didn't even explain that. Tom Ryder is the I guess one of the villains.
Actors.
He's the actual actor too. Ryan Gosling is the stuntman for. And at first I was like, oh, Tom Ryder, he's the biggest action star. Oh, you mean Tom Cruise? But then 5 minutes later, he mentions Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
Or he's like, make me look like Tom Cruise. He's talking about like the deep fake lady. Yep. And it's like, oh, so wait, Tom Ryder and Tom Cruise both exist. Okay. Anyways, but it was specifically when at the end action scene, they're in the helicopter, and Gale tells Tom to kill Colt, but Tom refuses.
Yeah.
Specifically, he says it's like, but he's my best stuntman or something.
It's weird because he's like,
he was so ready for
just it. Like 30 minutes later, not even 15 minutes later, he was about to set him on fire.
Or like an hour ago when he's on his boat and he's like tied up and he's like, all right, give me my fucking phone.
I don't need you to survive. I wanted the phone, but now I can kill you. So
yeah. I
guess 30 minutes later, they have he comes to some sort of realization.
Yeah, but it reminded me specifically of when the wife in Rashomon commands the bandit to kill the samurai.
Yeah, I could see that.
And the bandit refuses. And this takes place in the samurai story. Or I guess that's what it might not say.
So
it's specific. It's they're both of those moments are very different within the context for the respective films.
Very different.
But they are similar things that happen. There's two dudes who want to kill each other. A lady who is maybe taking the side of one of them, and she commands one of them to kill the other, and he refuses
them to get out. And
it doesn't work because the power of men, brotherhood. Manhood is too epic.
Yeah, I don't think Ryder is gonna end up too well after the events.
I think his career's over. Well, didn't he die at the fucking end of the movie? He got blown up.
Yeah,
or some shit. I don't know. It was kind of like
played off.
And then the lady was like, "Give me Jason Momoa."
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened. Or he's hospitalized. Or he's dead.
He looked like he just got like obliterated. But I don't know. I don't know what was this rated.
I was about to say if it's rated R, he's probably dead. But I think it was probably rated teen. Honestly, I don't think they said the F word more than once.
No,
which I think is still a rule. The more than once F word.
The most audience members.
But yeah, overall, it's not bad. I mean, they mentioned Thelma and Louise, which is. I have seen since then, and that is a better movie.
I like Thelma and Louise a lot.
I mean, maybe
it gets much more into like what we were missing with this movie, where like
the emotional connections.
What are the connections? Why are we?
I feel like I'm witnessing more real characters than just this. I don't know if Ryan Gosling and Aaron Taylor Johnson made out in the end before they did the big stunt, I would maybe care a little bit more, but they didn't. So
instead. Thelma and Louise had young Brad Pitt as their white boy of the week instead,
which was awesome. That was a surprise. And I'm like, oh, I thought he was too young for this, but no, he's old. He's in that shit. Is there anything else you want to say about the Fall Guy, Peter? It's got a silly name. It's like the game Fall Guys.
It does.
Fall Guys, except it should have been named Stumble Guys because that was better.
The Fall Guy because he is the Fall Guy, as mentioned in the movie.
No way.
But he's also Fall as a guy.
Oh my god,
there's so many layers.
Deep.
It's crazy. This is.
I should have counted how many times he falls when I watched it 2.5 speed. That would have been a little bit.
A lot.
I mean, again, this movie isn't like completely useless. There's like setups and payoffs for certain things. Like at some point, he describes like I could drive a boat backwards, and then in like 20 minutes later, we like see that. Apparently, there was certain post-it notes that like revealed certain things. Like there's a post-it note in like Tom Ryder's place that reveals like. Something like buy food for the unicorn or something, which the unicorn is like a drug image, so it's implied that Tom Ryder was also on those drugs. I guess also
implied, like when they go to the nightclub, he's like, he's on drugs,
exactly. But I mean, what I'm saying is that there are details that exist, and there is like I don't know, setups and payoffs. It's at its not most basic form, but it's fairly basic.
Yes,
it's
a movie's movie. Yeah. Also, looking into the director, I didn't realize he did direct Bullet Train, which is why it's kind of similar. Also, the Deadpool films. So he's got that kind of quippy humor, but also kind of a good depiction of action. And he's got like a great kind of sense of stunts and choreography in order to be really legible, which is excellent for a mainstream movie like this. Because there was a time that we were getting absolute shit shows.
We still kind of are.
Shaky cam, and just cut.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah,
So-
yeah. The action in this is much better, and even in Rashomon, that was also like good action. It was better action in that than
Blocking
like
in Rashomon
half the shit
was
today.
especially like kind of impressive with just like a lot of like fairly long takes that was able to transition to another take
Wait, in which movie?
in Rashomon.
Because I feel that it was that way in the Fall Guy. There was a lot of
Also-
the big like first scene at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's like an intro about like look at all these stunts
Exactly.
that are happening, and then there's sort of a big like a 3 minute long
Yeah.
one take as he's sort of getting prepared for everything. And there were a couple other things where there was
There's a lot
yeah
of,
like more seamless transitions. Like he's getting his face done in the thing, and he's talking to the lady, and then he walks out and he's immediately
I
talking
think
to
the
the
editing in both
other
films
stunt dude.
was pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's like the Fall Guy does a good job of like balancing those longer takes where they're normally in like bigger set pieces with like there was like a few montages that I noticed that they were kind of really liked, as well as having like the slower kind of that one time when they was like what how do you feel about like the split perspective and the shot was meta whatever, but it did work pretty well.
Yeah.
But I think that also like the editing in Rashomon was just as solid, and like equally contributed to the pace that you digest things.
Definitely.
And with the Fall Guy, you can be a little quicker and a little more kind of frenetic with your editing, and it does a good job of kind of dragging you along for the ride.
All you need is some quickly edited shots, and I Was Made for Loving You to be played a couple times, and there you go.
Yeah, there's your trailer moment. That'll get you.
There were loads of trailer moments in this.
Yes,
What are the trailer moments in Rashomon? There's nothing. It's so boring.
Yeah.
Or what the pathetic face of the woodcutter is just like, the worst thing ever that happened to me. Shut up,
Never that movie would never make it today.
bro.
Cannot.
Do we have anything else to say about the Fall Guy, Peter?
Don't think so. I think it was a base movie, slightly elevated by pretty good performances
So that he's just like a
Action.
real mentality.
and yeah, kind of striding that balance between being funny and wholesome versus being obnoxious and like overly grating.
Yeah, I agree. I would say overall it is decent. There are some points that irk me, mostly just with the specific types of comedy being displayed. But overall, I don't think it's a bad time at all. I think it's easily digestible in a different way than Rashomon, and appeals to a much wider audience, especially for the modern day.
Yeah.
And I would give this one out of 10, Peter, a 6, which was a little bit high. I was sort of bordering on the 5.
I'm on a 5 to 6 right now.
Yeah.
I would also probably
I
lean
think
6.
Yeah, for me, it just barely goes in the 6 direction.
I think
for
I
now.
was more engaged than I expected to be,
Yeah.
and I was smiling more than I expected to be.
All right, the one funny part I forgot. The one funny part is like when the it's like the final action scene, and like the Tom Riders dudes are like squaring up
Oh, yeah.
against the stuntmen, and the dudes like stuntmen assemble, and they like do the movie like
Yeah.
clash, like
that
fight into each other. Which, by the way, the movie that they were making looks like super shitty. It was like
Oh, yeah.
some like big like space
cowboy
opera
kind of
battle
thing,
on
yeah.
like this orange desert planet with like this like choir,
Like a
like
Ben
the,
Hur kind of thing, yeah.
like who would ever want to watch something like that
And
and
like a crazy dramatic sci-fi
Yeah.
set on a desert planet.
with big space battles?
Weird.
That sounds stupid. Yeah. Do we have an outro? We plan on making more of these epic videos because our opinions deserve, the people deserve to hear us. I think it's been long enough. We've gone 22 or 3 years without, the people of this good planet Earth
Knowing
hearing.
and respecting our
Yeah, and I think now is about damn time that they receive some of it. So
Exactly.
here we are, doing the good of for the good of the people or some bullshit.
for the benefit of all audience members and even those who will never watch the movies. Just trust us.
They
know what we're talking about.
yeah, like spoilers for blah 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 thing. They don't care
No, exactly.
because they just want to hear our opinion anyways.
Yeah.
It's just that damn good.
That's why I'm on YouTube.
Well, soon it'll be the opposite. We'll be the ones preaching it,
Exactly.
and they'll be the ones coming to us. and we will be the gospel to the masses of media consumption.
Let's go.
Which is I hate the consumption word. I'm a consumer.
I am
Oh no.
that's
Uh,
strong consumer. But I guess now
you
we're
said it.
putting
Now we are publicly strong consumers. Yeah, I look forward to more epic shit in the future.